Ready? Ready? Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today is Tuesday, February the 15th, and this is a special meeting of the Prescott City Council. We're going to be talking about the new shops out on Highway 69. Let's start the meeting. John, would you lead us in the invocation? Then we'll go straight to the pledge, and then we'll do a roll call.
Please bow me, please. Our most gracious and loving Father in heaven, we humbly approach thy throne of grace this afternoon. We give thee thanks and glory and honor, for thou art the creator of all things. We ask, Father, at this time that you would watch over those who are in foreign fields. We ask that you would bless our men and women in military service, Father, protect them, bring them back home to us safely. We ask, Father, that you would watch over those who protect us here on our homelands. We ask that you would give them wisdom, give them knowledge. We ask, Father, that you would watch over us as the council and mayor. As we make decisions, Father, we ask that you would help us to do so with thoughtfulness, with forethought and wisdom, with knowledge of the things that we are to decide. We ask, Father, that we would always keep the utmost in our hearts and our minds when our decisions are being made. We ask, Father, that we would walk in the light, Father, for you are the light. Forgive us now and go with us as we go into this meeting. Help us, Father, to be good stewards of the things that thou hast bestowed upon us. So we ask it in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, John. Join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, Liz, roll call, please.
Mayor Kirkendall?
Here.
Councilman Blair?
Here.
Councilman Hanna?
Here.
Councilman Lamerson?
Here.
Councilwoman Lynn? Here. Councilwoman Lopez? Here. Councilwoman Suttles?
Present.
Okay, we have one item on the agenda today, and that's going to be the shops at Prescott Gateway Development. A little housekeeping. Staff will make their presentation, and council, they would rather that we stop them any point along the way and ask any questions that we have. When that is complete, then we have a couple of folks in the audience that have asked to speak, and we'll let them speak, and then we will go to the public. We'll probably move back and forth. We know we have several folks that are here to speak for the project. I don't have knowledge of anyone in particular that's speaking against it, but okay, we've got one, and we'll have more, I'm sure. We'll kind of alternate back and forth and take it from there. So let's go ahead, and Laura, it's ready to go.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council and the public. Just kind of a little overview, a reminder that last week was basically just an introduction to the project and a general overview. The documents that we referred to at last week's meeting have been available to the public since February 9th. They've been on the city's website. Those documents also included the agreements to which you'll be discussing today. As most people know, and as certainly as council knows, we have received many comments via the telephone, emails, online media, and after looking at and reading all of the comments that we've received, they fall into three basic categories, and those will be addressed at today's meeting. Those categories really are comments regarding the proposed city's financial investment, the role of government and economic development investments, and support for the project. I'd just like to answer one question that we've been asked quite a bit, is did Trader Joe's or that shopping center consider moving into a vacant building in Prescott? The short answer is yes. We know from several years from Jane, our retired economic development director, Jane Bristol's dialogues with the company for several years, they did look at other locations. They looked at Frontier Village. Two comments I can make on Frontier Village. One, the location doesn't meet their site selection criteria, and two, it doesn't really benefit the city of Prescott, as we would receive no tax dollars, sales tax dollars, because it's on the Yavapai Indian tribe reservation. They did look at locations such as Kmart, etc. They were considered, but none of them met their site selection criteria. Trader Joe's has several hundred stores around the country, is very successful, and they're simply just not going to locate where the prospects for continuing are marginal for their success. And if a vacant property did meet their criteria, it's conceivable they could have made it work, but not at this time. So that just kind of answers the question that we've received a lot of, is why didn't they look at other properties? So before we get into the items that I mentioned earlier, we will have Tom Geis give a summary of the staff report, which was also put online if anybody wanted to see that ahead of time. It provides a background and identifies the actions that council needs to look at today. And again, as the mayor just stated, if council has questions at any time during the presentation, please don't hesitate to stop staff and ask those questions.
Thank you, Lloyd. Mayor and Council, there are 6 items on your agenda today for your consideration. This project, Shops at Prescott Gateway. Agenda item A is a resolution entering into a development agreement with ERH Acquisitions, LLC, for the development of a 7.1-acre retail center located at the southwest corner of Lee Boulevard and Highway 69. Item B is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of the 7.1-acre parcel. Item C relates to an ordinance authorizing the leasing and potential sale of that property in conjunction with a lease purchase option. And City Attorney Kidd in a few minutes will present more details and specifics on the development agreement, the purchase assignment, and then the lease purchase option. Agenda item D is a resolution regarding the transfer of appropriations, and Budget and Finance Director Mark Woodfield will present information regarding the appropriation, and in addition he'll provide you details regarding the anticipated return on the city's investment. Agenda items E and F pertain to the site plan and the sign plan. As you know, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered the site plan at their January 27th meeting and made a unanimous recommendation to approve the site plan. In short, the project as proposed does meet all aspects of the Prescott's Land Development Code. As you know, that Phase 1 of the project comprises 20,000 square feet in this area here, these 2 buildings. The 12,000 square foot building here, which would be for Trader Joe's, and then an adjacent 8,000 square foot building for possible restaurant and other retail uses. The sign plan was considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their February 10th meeting, and ultimately they recommended a unanimous approval of the sign plan, but with 3 conditions of approval. There are 3 monument signs proposed to be installed for this project. And 2 of those signs are on Highway 69, and the overhead screen is one of those signs. One of the conditions of approval is that this sign, which is proposed to be at the right turn in only off of Highway 69, be reduced in height from 12 feet to 8 feet. A very similar sign is proposed along South Lee Boulevard at the primary entrance to the project. And the Commission's second condition of approval was that sign be moved 10 feet off the property line and also be reduced from 12 feet to 8 feet in height. The third condition related to the total number of monument signs for within the project, and that would restrict and limit the number of monument signs to the 3 monument signs which would be on the frontage of the property, in that there would be no additional monument signs for individual pad buildings and locations within the project. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Mark Woodville, who can, again, talk a little bit more about the economic benefits and the appropriations.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As Tom mentioned, we're going to go over the economics of the project briefly here, similar to what we did last week. First of all, the city's investment is estimated to be about $2.2 million. The city will purchase the 7.1 acres at $2 million, which is at the corner of Lee Boulevard and Highway 69. This is just slightly below appraised value. It's estimated additional $200,000 will be needed for closing costs and site improvements that need to happen on the property.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Mark, when did they do that appraisal?
It was initially done in August, but I believe it was updated in February of 2011. Last month, or this month? Is that right, Gary? The appraisal was updated in
There
February?
were two appraisals. One was done last year. I think it was in September. The other one was done on February 1st of this month.
February 1st.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the city's total estimated cost or investment in this project is anticipated to be $2.2 million. Where the money's coming from is another question we've been getting. So just to clarify, the monies will be coming from the capital improvement funds. Yes, Councilman Hanna.
Mark, on that estimated $200,000 for minor improvements and closing costs, is that high? It seems like it's a little high.
Well, the improvements deal with the driveway going into the property, and again, it's an estimate, so it could be a little high.
Did you estimate high? So
Yes.
We're not going to be over that, correct?
We estimated to not have a number to not go over. So it could be and probably will be slightly less than that. The monies are coming from the city's capital improvement funds. Now, these funds were established by council several years ago. They're one-time type monies. They come from budgetary savings, revenues exceeding expectations, from sale of unneeded city lands, those type of things. These one-time revenues, council put into a fund to be used for improvement of city facilities, and purchase of land, economic development, and to match grants. So that's where the monies are coming from. This project was not known or anticipated during the formation of the 2011 budget. So those monies were not appropriated. They were available. They were left in reserve. They just were not appropriated. So the one item in this, in your actions today, is to move budget appropriation from a fund that we've identified has some, which is a water fund, and that's because some projects in there have been delayed and will not happen until the following years. So there is appropriation available, and the action is to move the appropriation into the general fund so these capital improvement funds can be used for this project. There is no money moving. There will be no money from the water fund used to buy this land. It will totally come from the capital improvement funds that are available for this type of project.
Mayor, if I could, explain to me how you can move money, but you don't spend it.
We're not moving money. We're moving budget appropriations. State budget law and city charter requires that budget be established for particular projects or activities throughout the year. This one, since it wasn't anticipated, was not designated. Council is allowed to move appropriations from this project to that project. It is not money. It is just budget appropriation. Once a budget is adopted at what your annual budget is, you cannot exceed that. And you cannot exceed the budget in any area. But council has the ability to say, okay, water fund, you're not going to need this $2 million this year in appropriation, so we're going to move that appropriation to the general fund for this project.
But it wasn't council that said that. You were able to go to those funds and said, we can pull from the water.
Correct. We look for where it was available, and we bring it to you to do the move or to authorize the movement, which is what the ordinance is that's in your packet.
Mark, we had a meeting last week and went through a bunch of this, and there wasn't, unless I missed it, there wasn't any discussion of where you were going to pull, not money, heaven forbid if I say that, where you were going to pull for this capital improvement, because that's where the $2 million is coming to buy that real estate, correct?
No, the $2 million is coming from the capital improvement fund.
That's what I said.
Oh, okay. The appropriation is coming from the water fund. And no, we didn't discuss it. It was staff that looked at where appropriation wasn't going to be used in the 2011 budget because of timing of projects. So we identified appropriation that could be moved.
So last week, when we went over this, at that time, you didn't know where you were going to move that money.
We were looking at that time to see where to move the money. And again, it's not projects that won't be done, it's projects that were anticipated to be done this year, but are not going to be completed this year, will be completed in following years.
And I understand that, and I found it extremely interesting at a project this big, that we're sort of moving through the hoops as quick as we can. From the Monday Courier, I find out that the appropriation is coming from the water fund. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I just didn't realize that was the source, is that we weren't quite ready to decide where it was coming from, because we've been working on this a while.
We have been working on this, and it was in the council packet, which is where the Courier got it.
And it's picking up the packet and finding out this was coming. We didn't talk. I talked a little bit today with City Manager Hadley, and whether it be, I didn't discuss this with any council. We wanted to make sure we didn't break anything out, but again, I would have thought we would have known last week or even before, maybe even when the public came and found out what was going on, where we were moving all this. That's my issue right now, is I just haven't got a clean picture yet. Today we are, and today we're voting on it. It should have been presented a little bit sooner.
And again, it's appropriation, it's not funding. We've always said where the funds were coming from. This is just to comply with the requirements of the city charter to move the appropriation. And we're sorry we didn't identify it sooner.
Nobody knows that better than you as the treasurer, and it just still needs to be public, again, with $2 million, where it's moving, what it's coming from. So continue. Thank you.
Okay.
Mark.
I got another question.
Councilman Hart.
Not a question, but, well, yeah, it is a question. How much money do we have in there that we can actually...
In the capital improvement funds?
Capital improvement funds.
Total funds available in the capital improvement funds, I believe we brought a number during the mid-year budget report at $2.4 million are in there right now.
Okay. So we're not depleting this completely, is that correct?
Not completely. And again, as we get through this more and talk about the rent, since the funds are coming from the capital improvement funds, the rents received on the property would go back into the capital improvement funds and replenish that fund, and then when the city is bought out, of course, the monies would go back into that fund, so the fund would be reestablished.
Are you going to explain that a little bit better
Yes.
later on? Because I want people to understand that, because they don't. Because they keep saying we're depleting funds and it will never be put back in.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's the city's part. ERH Acquisitions will construct at their expense the buildings on the site. Phase 1, the 2 buildings of 20,000 square feet that Tom talked about, 12,000 of that being the Trader Joe's at an estimated cost of $4 million. We talked a little bit about the rents. The lease on the land will be as a percentage of the total municipal cost, which will be approximately 2.2, could be less, whatever it is. It'll be based on what the total municipal cost into the project is. 6% for years 1 through 5. Approximately, if 2.2 would be $132,000 per year. 7% in years 6 through 10 at $154,000 per year, and then in year 11 it goes to 8, and then it's incremented by a CPI adjustment if the city is still in it at that point. And as we were just discussing, those monies would go back into the capital improvement funds to be used for those type of projects as we go forward. The city buyout, which we've alluded to, is once the developer, if the developer exercises the purchase option between years 1 and 5, the city gets its full municipal cost back. The full 2.2 or whatever that number ends up being would come back into the capital improvement funds. After that year, it increments by 4% to $2,288,000. And at that point, once they bought out, those funds would come back in and go into the capital improvement funds. Starting in year 11, it starts to increase at 4% off of that for each year until the option is exercised. more of that adjusted for based on CPI. And again, those monies would go back into the capital improvement funds and be used for the projects that are allowed through there. Now, we tried to estimate sales tax, and we did estimate sales tax. When you estimate sales tax, it's very difficult because there are numbers out there per square foot and all that kind of thing, but it's still always a guess until the project is in and operating. It's a guess as to how much they will gross per square foot. It's a guess as to how much will be just moved sales tax coming from one store to another store within the city to the new store. Those are all just guesses. So we did our best at guessing based on the facts that we had. At 12,000 square feet at the published rate that Trader Joe's grosses per year at $17,500. And then at the 8,000 square feet of other shops, we projected that at $250 per square foot per year. And that gives you a number around $460,000. So with that total potential gross, we did an estimate of the $350 to $450 based on the fact that, that is probably a high estimate considering movement of sales tax, considering those numbers might not be achieved in this market. We felt more comfortable with the range of $350 to $450. Is it absolutely right? Only time will tell. But, it's a guess at this point, and we feel pretty good with the range. But again, this is sales tax. This is in addition to the lease earnings. If we just look at the lease earnings of this project, if the city is bought out at the end of the 5th year, for example, the city would receive $660,000 in rent and all of its money back. That's almost a 30% return on our investment. If it's at the end of 10 years, the city would receive about $1.5 million plus our initial money back for almost a 70% return on our investment. So the project without the sales tax has a very good return on it. But the sales tax is also important because that is what we fund general fund operations and streets projects with. So that's where we got our estimate at $350 to $450 per year. And even after we're bought out from the land position on this project, and again, we had the land securing our investment, even after we're bought out from that, the sales tax per year does continue as long as, obviously, the shop is open. In addition to the sales tax directly from retail activity on the site, you have the sales tax on the construction on the site. You have sales tax from the leasing activity on the site. And you're going to have an increase in sales tax from additional traffic to the area from this site. As more people come to Trader Joe's, they'll probably go to the mall and other retailers in that area. And these are not necessarily only shoppers from Prescott, they're shoppers from the overall region. So that helps the citizens of Prescott to fund their general fund operations by having more regional retail type shopping attractions here. So with that, are there any other questions on the financial aspects of the project? If not, I would turn it over to the developer to discuss the next section.
Brett, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. My name is Brett Herron. Address is 1 East Washington, Phoenix, Arizona.
Mayor, may I ask Brett one question? Last week you were here, and the question I presented was, had Trader Joe's ever had an investment similar to what we're doing with purchasing the property with your leaser, or however you want to put it? You were going to come back with an answer.
Yeah, I talked with them, and he didn't know of any like that. They have about 350 stores across the country, and in his case, he generally deals just with their landlord, which in this case would be us. Mm-hmm. So he said there may be situations in other parts of the country where there is a situation like this that he may just not be aware of because he only deals with the person that they actually pay the rent check to. But he wasn't aware of any like this.
So from that answer, this would be the first one that Trader Joe's is doing with the municipality similar to Prescott?
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. I want to start the discussion tonight with just a little bit of an overview of RED development and who we are and some of our experience developing shopping centers. RED was formed in 1995. We have headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as Kansas City, Missouri. We have about 175 employees of the company. Since the formation of the company, we've completed 23 projects that total about 11 million square feet of retail space across 10 states. We also have an additional 6 projects that are under development or under construction that total about 7 million square feet. And that's what we have under development right now. What I brought with me today was just a few pictures and some plans for some of our projects, just to give you a feel for some of the other types of projects that we develop. And what I'll do is I'll just set these up here and run through a little bit of the the details on each of these. First one is just a photo from one of our projects in Kansas City. This is we call 119, which is about 166,000 square feet. And just to give you kind of a relate that back to this project, it's about 4 times the size of the project that we're envisioning here. Crate & Barrel is the anchor tenant. There's a site plan here that shows some of the other tenants that we have there. Crate & Barrel, Sullivan Steakhouse, Apple Store, Z Gallery, as well as Trader Joe's, which we just signed a lease with them in the past couple months for them to take occupancy of that building. Another one that some of you may be familiar with is located at Happy Valley and I-17. So as you're traveling to Phoenix on I-17, it's one of the first centers you see on your left-hand side of the road. This one is a joint venture that we have with USAA Real Estate Company. They have their corporate campus back in this area. And here we developed a center that's about 366,000 square feet, has Harkins as the anchor, Dick's Sporting Goods, Best Buy, P.F. Chang's, and a collection of some other pads and retail tenants throughout the project. Just another quick visual there of some of the buildings that we developed there. One of the other projects that we have in the Phoenix area, and this is one that has been in the news recently, is called Cityscape. And this is a mixed-use development, probably one of the largest projects that's under development in the state right now. And it consists of a 600,000 square foot, 26-story office building, which is located here. That office building was constructed over the last couple years and is now about 95% occupied. In addition to the office component, we have a hotel component, the Hotel Palomar, that is just commencing construction. The balance of the project is a mix of retail, restaurants, and fashion tenants. We have a CVS Pharmacy, Stand Up Live, which is a comedy club, Oakville Grocery, Lucky Strike, bowling lanes, some restaurants, Five Guys Burgers, a salon, Urban Outfitters and Charming Charlie's, which are some fashion tenants, as well as some other restaurants along this street. So I hope with that I've given you a good overview of RED and the type of projects that we develop and some of our history. Happy to answer any questions on that as we go along. I did want to spend a little bit of time tonight just talking about what it takes to put together a development project, whether it be a large or small project. The first thing that you need for that is you need to have a tenant. And we have that here in Trader Joe's. They're one of the top retailers in the country. They have the highest sales per square foot of any grocery chain out there. The second thing you need is you need a bank that's willing to finance the construction of the improvements. The bank financing, as you know, has gotten a little tighter over the last few years. We do have a lender that's interested in financing this project. We don't think that that's going to be a problem. The difference between trying to finance one of these projects now versus 3 years ago is that instead of those banks funding 80-85% of the cost of the project, now they're funding 50%, maybe 60% of the project. And that brings me to one of the other components, which is attracting investment capital to the project. To be able to get an appropriate return that is going to attract that capital, the project needs to be structured in a way that you can do that. With less bank financing available, it means you need more investment capital. And then the final thing that you need is you need a developer that can pull all of these things together, that can bring the tenant, that can get the bank financing, and can attract the investment capital. So we believe that we have the capabilities, the relationships to make all of that happen. The other thing I wanted to do today is introduce our attorney, Gary Birnbaum. He's an attorney with the law firm Ameriscal Weeks. He's also the Associate Dean of the ASU School of Law. So before I turn it over to him, I wanted to see if there were any more questions for me.
Nope. Bring him on.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. I promise not to take as much time as everybody fears when a lawyer steps to the podium. There are only two additional points that I would like to make to the council. The first is that we are dealing here with what people sometimes call a public-private partnership. It's a bit of a misnomer. There are no partnerships between governments and private parties in Arizona, but it's a term that people use in the development field for what is basically a win-win situation. It's a structured deal that allows the developer to obtain some benefits and the municipality to obtain some benefits. So the first thing I want to point out to you is just how common these types of incentivized agreements or development agreements are. And the easiest way to do it without discussing any of them is just to give you an idea of some of the projects that have been undertaken over the last 3 or 5 or 7 or even 10 years in the state of Arizona. So let me give them to you very quickly by municipality so you can get a feel for just how broad the penetration of this type of deal has been throughout the state. They include Santan Marketplace, which is a regional mall and power center in Gilbert, Arizona. They include the Coolidge Town Center, which has not been built yet, but has a development agreement in place approved by the Coolidge Town Council. The Casa Grande Promenade, which some of you have seen if you drive to Tucson, sits on the corner of Florence Boulevard and Interstate 10. The Queen Creek Marketplace, which is a Walmart-anchored center in Queen Creek, Arizona. Estrella Falls, which is a regional shopping center and other uses in Goodyear, Arizona, that's about to begin construction but has not yet, but the agreement has been approved. The Wave Yard in Mesa, which may or may not ever get built, but it's an amusement, water-related amusement park, the largest in the country of its type. Cityscape, which is in downtown Phoenix, which is the RED project. Yuma Palms, which is a large shopping center just off the freeway in Yuma. The second phase of the Scottsdale waterfront, which many of you know is the state's first Nordstrom store. Chandler Mall and all of the development around Chandler Mall, Tempe Marketplace in Tempe, a new project not yet out of the ground called Daybreak at Picacho in the city of Eloy, and ultimately we hope the development of the Mesa Proving Grounds with a Peabody Hotel, golf courses, etc. That's just a quick run-through of projects over the last few years, and there are many, many others that are the result of public-private partnerships. And with respect to those, let me add one thing that I know the city staff and the city attorney are very proud of. Every one of those deals involved some type of incentive to the developer where sales taxes or property taxes or bed taxes are utilized to help make the project take place. In this case, in the shops at Prescott Gateway, none of those revenues
are being utilized. The city's role is narrower than it is in any one of the 15 projects that I just mentioned. Now, my second point is, so why are we here? Why is the city involved at all in this project? This has become a very common problem, question, issue, and opportunity in Arizona, particularly during the years where our economy has not, what's a good word, been flourishing. Is that fair? This project is, for a development company, small. It is moderately speculative in the sense that while Trader Joe's is wonderful, they're the only tenant currently committed to the project. In addition to that, we hope at the end of a very bad market, but not yet at the beginning of a very good market. And this project, if RED had to do it alone, RED and its affiliates, would require approximately $2 to $2.2 million up front in cash just to tie up the land. You'll remember last week when Mr. Herron spoke to you, he talked about resource allocation. The problem with a project of this size at this time is it most likely would not get built, absent the type of public-private partnership that we've negotiated with the city staff and that we hope you'll approve tonight. So why does RED want to do this deal? Well, it is a Trader Joe's center. It is an area RED would like to expand to. It is a structured deal that now allows RED to undertake the project without financing $2 million up front for the land acquisition. And that, in turn, allows a reasonable rate of return for the city and for RED to pay on the land, which in turn allows a reasonable rate to be charged to Trader Joe's. It's all pieces of the puzzle that fit together. And other than the finances, what does the city get out of it? Well, you get a major national developer with its reputation, with its relationships with Trader Joe's, with its relationship with the landowner, that is ready to go on the project, that has financing arranged for the improvements on the project, all of which will immediately improve the value of the city's land and answer any question anybody may have about the security, if you will, for the city's investment. In the economy we're in today, both in the retail industry and generally in the United States, this is exactly the type of project that can be built. If you look around Arizona today and look for projects that don't have public-private partnerships, you'll be very hard-pressed to find one, certainly in the retail market. So I end my comments, if I may, with a very brief story that I think I've told to other councils, but sometimes people become fixated on positions they've adopted before or on philosophic concerns about why is the city doing this type of public-private partnership. So I hope this story is not totally apocryphal, but here it is. It goes back to the 1960s when Everett Dirksen, Senator of Illinois, all of you look like you're almost my age. You probably remember Senator Dirksen. And he went down to the Senate one morning and he was asked to vote on a military appropriations bill of, let's say, $60 million. And the senator stood up on the floor, made his speech against it, and voted no on the bill. At lunchtime, President Johnson took him to the woodshed, if you will, and convinced him that his vote was not well taken. So he came back in the afternoon, and now the $60 million had inflated to $80 million, and Senator Dirksen voted for it. A reporter, purportedly, allegedly, from Chicago, grabbed the senator as he was leaving the room, and the young man said to him, "Senator, how could you vote no on 60 in the morning and yes on 80 in the afternoon?" And he looked at the young man and he said, "Young man, I am a man of rigid principles. And first among those principles is flexibility. I hope the lesson of the story is obvious to all. Thank you all very much for your time and your support. Any questions? I'd be
Yes,
happy to take.
before you leave, and counsel, anyone here? I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
About 2 months ago, the Arizona Republic in the business section, with decent headlines, announced the purchase and leaseback of 15 acres for $3.1 million that was purchased by the city of Avondale for a Carlos O'Brien's restaurant. And reading the detail, apparently Carlos O'Brien had bought the property to build out, and because of the money availability, was not able to do the project. So they in turn sold that property to the city of Avondale for a very similar project as we're doing, for $3.1 million, and then leased back 10 acres of that for an amount that was not disclosed. Are you familiar with that at all?
I'm passingly familiar, Mayor. I was not involved with that project.
Okay. But and Gary, I think you followed it up, and it's pretty similar to what we're trying to do. So and there's another recent event in Phoenix where Charles Schwab, in order to do some office buildings, are doing a very similar, and they don't have the component of the sales tax that we do. But apparently, and then in Mesa, Crescent Crown is doing a similar type of financing for a distribution plant. And so it's not uncommon. I think this is what, and we found 3 in the last year that pretty much follow what we're doing, except we have a component of sales tax, which is really what we're looking for. We're looking for revenue 2 different places. One is rental, is we want land rent, and we also want sales tax. And then the additional component of this project is that the lease to the tenant is also a taxable event that the city of Prescott will share in. So, but I enjoyed the story also. Thank you.
Mayor, one comment on the examples you gave. To the extent I'm familiar with those are in fact all municipal leaseback programs similar to this one. But there are actually 2 or 3 dozen that I can tell you about offhand. I won't unless you ask. But most of those exist for yet another reason, and that's called the GPLET, or Government Property Lease Excise Tax. In Arizona, government property, as I'm sure most of you are aware, is not subject to property taxation. So there is a transaction structure that is used often. If we focus just on the Phoenix area, Renaissance 1, Renaissance 2, Arizona Center, Collier Center, the Phelps Dodge Ryan Building, Center Point in Tempe, Tempe Marketplace, the Suncor project on the lakes in Tempe, etc., etc. All of those properties, all of them, are owned by the government and leased to the developer. In those cases, the reason that they did it, the principal reason, is because it allowed the developer to avoid property taxes and instead to pay an excise tax on the lease. In this case, again, this is not what's called a GPLET transaction. It's not a bed tax reimbursement transaction. It's not a sales tax reimbursement transaction. It is fair to say that from the perspective of the municipality, it is better than every one of those deals and better than all of the transactions that I outlined for you earlier. So there's 20 more to go on top of the 3 leasebacks that you mentioned that are even more recent.
Thank you very much. And you won't be leaving. You'll be hanging around.
I'll be here for as long as you need.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Council, any second thoughts? Okay. Let's continue on then.
Mayor, I think at this point we'd just like to conclude with a few comments before kind of open it up. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's Gary's turn. Sorry, Gary, you're so quiet.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I was enjoying listening to Mr. Birnbaum and some of the examples he gave. I'll just go real quickly through the development. There's the different agreements that we have proposed and some of the terms. If I can ask for staff to go ahead and put the slides on from last week, I'll try to elaborate a little bit beyond the slides. There are three principal agreements in this particular matter: development agreement, real property purchase agreement, and then there's the ground lease agreement, which we've talked a little bit about today. The first agreement is the development agreement. That's the first one that's on the council's agenda. It's a 20-year development agreement, and it basically provides for construction under the terms of the Land Development Code as it now exists at the time and as it exists at the time of construction. So we're using city ordinances in terms of the development agreement itself. City is required to use best efforts to promptly issue plan approvals and permits. City is required to buy property from Vertical Holdings, and we're doing that in this particular case by means of an assignment and assumption of REDS, or ERH LLC is more appropriate, the term in this particular case, by virtue of an assignment of their rights for purchase of the property. And we're getting the benefits of their negotiation on that real property purchase agreement, which is, I think, very favorable to ERH LLC acquisitions. And the city is assuming that that particular agreement under, I think, really favorable terms. And we had originally started using our real property purchase agreement, but, you know, I'm very satisfied with using their purchase agreement. It's actually more favorable than some of the terms that we initially started out with. So. ERH does the site design on the project. The city is required to build the entryway, roadway, and pay the fees that are associated with that. ERH is going to do site and overall engineering design. Site improvements need to be completed by the city 60 days following the city's acquisition. Night work, and I talked about that last week, is specifically authorized in the development agreement, and it has to be done, I think, to meet the project deadlines and under the time frames that everyone's trying to work under. There's a standard kind of clause called force majeure. If any kind of litigation, acts of God, or anything that happened that are outside of the control of any of the parties, the agreement's extended for those time periods. There's some standard warranties that are in the agreement. No party is aware of any breach or default by any third parties. There's no litigation pending or anything like that on the properties. Both parties agree to defend the development agreement. That's real important, you know, in case anything does ever happen. We both, you know, agree to jointly defend the agreement. That's an important clause, and you know, I'm glad we have that in this agreement, and hopefully we'll have those in future agreements as well. Developer has a right to assign its entitlements under the agreement. The development agreement runs with the land. The DA is binding on the successors in interest. One thing that we have in the development agreement that we've had consistently in city development agreements for the last 5 or 6 years, which we really fought hard to keep, and which we have in this agreement, is there's no damage remedies. If there's any kind of a lawsuit involving the development agreement, the city doesn't face any kind of damage remedies. There are equitable remedies that are provided, you know, that mandamus, which is a court order ordering the city or any party in breach to comply. Primarily, mandamus will run against the city, but there are declaratory judgment or injunction remedies that that can apply. Waiver of jury trials, waiver of attorney's fees, so we don't have to worry if we get into a lawsuit. And the only time we've been in a lawsuit is if there's a really bona fide dispute. At least in my experience here in the city, we wouldn't be worrying about a downside risk of attorney's fees coming down on the other side of it. So that's kind of a general summary of the development agreement. The next is the real property purchase agreement. And as I talked about it, there's an assignment and assumption agreement. The ordinance that you have in the packet contains an assumption and assignment agreement and authorization of the purchase agreement. Mark's talked a little bit about the general terms of the purchase agreement. We're going to be purchasing the property for $2 million. There's $25,000, which is payable as earnest money. The city basically assigns and assumes the purchase agreement, again, between ERH and Vertical Holding that was negotiated between the two of them. There's RED, which is the S&R, under the assignment agreement, retains and maintains its obligation to be responsible for those portions of the sales agreement that pertain to Trader Joe's, and so they agreed to indemnify us and hold us harmless for that, and we can get, they can basically obtain reassignment for purposes of fulfilling what they need to do under the Trader Joe's lease, in which case we can get our monies back under the agreement. The assignment and assumption agreement gives us the ability and authority under the contract to implement what are called other acts reasonably necessary to effectuate the intent of the agreement. And with that in mind, when we're considering the purchase agreement, you know, one condition of escrow that I recommend be included in the escrow before we're closing, and I've spoken with Red and their attorneys, and they are agreeable to including this particular term, is to make sure that we do not close anything until their contingencies under the Trader Joe's lease are satisfied. And they basically, I'm not sure whether it's a notice of satisfaction of contingencies or whatever that would be provided to the city under that situation. So at that point in time we close, because that was a question that several council members had. What happens if Trader Joe's doesn't come? Well, if Trader Joe's doesn't come under that particular provision of escrow, we don't close. So we're not in the loop on the $2 million.
That will be put in there, Dave?
Yeah, and that would be a recommendation that I would have as council, tell staff to include that in or direct me to include that in the escrow instruction. There's a standard purchase agreement, inspection of the property 30 days after the title commitment survey. We're going to have a chance to see some of the buyer's environmental studies and everything. Normally when the city buys property these days, we do an environmental survey to make sure that we're not buying property that has any kind of environmental hazards or anything like that. And that's a standard practice that we've had on all major property acquisitions for about the last 3 or 4 years now. So we'll follow through on that. Costs are prorated, kind of a standard prorated escrow type agreement. And basically, at the bottom line, if the city were to default in any way in terms of the purchase agreement, the seller's sole remedy is to keep the $25,000 escrow deposit. Nice thing about the purchase agreement is each party, if there is any kind of dispute on the purchase agreement, each party pays its own attorney's fees. So that's a real plus side in terms of that agreement. The last agreement I want to talk about is the lease agreement, and that's a lease purchase option agreement, and I'll go through that a little bit. First of all, the purchase agreement by the city and the development agreement are prerequisites in the ground lease agreement. We've dealt with the concept of total municipal costs in terms of if the city were to sell basically the property within year 1 to year 5. And that's to reimburse the city for the cost of the driveway improvement, the costs of closing on the property, and the $2 million capital investment the city has in the real estate. So we made sure when we drafted the agreement that the city would recover and recoup during those 5 years. And that's if the property were to be sold or purchased during that time period. It's possible, depending on what the market does, that the property could be worth less, it could be worth more. We looked at the term of the lease agreement, and Mark kind of went through that a little bit. After the 5th year, we get a return on our money. Excuse me, I'm mixing a couple of different concepts here. Rent commences on the property at 6% initially, and that's based on the total municipal investment. It goes up basically to 7% at 61 months, and at year 121 it goes up to 8%. At year 15 there's an 8% plus a CPI consumer price increase that is added to that. So we have a consumer price adjustment built into the rent if there is a positive or affirmative consumer price adjustment upward. Lease agreement requires compliance with future codes and ordinances as they might be amended if they're not in direct conflict with the lease. Insurance is required as part of the lease agreement by the lessee. Only the lessee's, this is really critical I think, only the lessee's interest in the premises or the pads can be encumbered or mortgaged. So the city basically, and that was real important when we negotiated, that we don't subrogate our real property interests. And so if anything does go wrong, the city still maintains fee title interest without worrying about anything as far as foreclosure on our fee title interest. So that was very important. Like most lease agreements, if the premises are built, the mortgagee can step in and cure the defaults. This has to be done with due diligence. The lessee retains the right to assign the project or sign the lease agreement. The assignee assumes all the obligations of the assignment. Default, what if something happens and monies are not paid under the lease agreement? The lessee basically has the right to cure monetary defaults in the lease. They have 10 days, not less than 10 days to do that. 30 days for non-monetary type cures. And if it's a non-monetary type issue in the lease agreement and they're working diligently in terms of trying to cure it, they've got a 60-day cure provision. If that's not corrected, if there's no timely cure, if those situations are not corrected, the city can re-enter the property, basically recover its damages and ultimately obtain title to the premises. So that's kind of the security at the end of the lease in the event of a major default. Let's see what else. The improvements that are installed by the lessee, which would be the buildings and everything, remain their property during the period of the lease, assuming that there's no event of default. City can't condemn during the lease period, and that's, I think, fairly standard in these kind of situations, so that the lease has a long-term value that they can finance on. And let me talk a little bit about the lease purchase options. They can buy for total municipal costs on years 1 to 5. On years 5 to 10, they can purchase the property at our total municipal cost plus 4%. After year 10, we tried to build in an escalator clause. It's real hard to see what fair market value might be. We had to kind of figure out and estimate what value there would be, and also try to come up with a situation where the city was able to recoup its money and ensure that if we had a good investment going in the future, if we weren't able to get the total sale at that point in time. So after year 10, we get total municipal cost plus 4% that goes up each year. And there's an example of that's in the lease agreement you have on Article 19, Section 2. There's also an ability to partially option the property. So if they wanted to purchase the property, it's based upon the formula that I just talked about, size of the square footage of the premises that are being purchased, and then you multiply it times 120. 120% of the city's total municipal cost in that property. So again, if partial options are exercised, even if they were exercised in years 1 to 5, we'll be making 20% on top of that, or 120% of our investment on that property. There's a couple other things in the lease that are important. If the property is assigned after it's constructed, if it's assigned by ERH in full, then the city basically can sell or assign its interest in the lease agreement we'll still own the property, but we can assign that. So it gives us some options. If we don't want to be landlords, we don't want to be involved in that, we can assign the leasehold interest at that point in time, or after 10 years, whichever period comes first. The lease contains some mutual indemnity provisions for negligent acts on our part or on the lessee's part. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. That's kind of a summary. There's a lot of pages of documents. I know you've all read them, but that's kind of a summary of the high points. And, we attorneys tend to cover, the details and the agreements that we feel are important, but there's more to it than that. That's just a summary and overview.
Council, question? Gary, not really a question. There had been concern of whether we had the opportunity to know that Trader Joe had a lease, and that Red had a lease.
Sure.
And you have had an opportunity to look at that lease, and are you prepared to tell the council that there is a lease in place and it's acceptable for what?
Yeah, I reviewed the lease. I have a copy of of the lease minus the financial terms between Trader Joe's and ERH, which is a proprietary situation. The lease agreement is signed. It was signed between Trader Joe's and ERH. It's got, kind of what I will call standard contingencies in it that I would expect in these kinds of commercial transactions. I think, and I can tell you a little bit that the lease period time has a 10-year period with options for a longer period of time. So multi-year options are in there. So it's a fairly standard agreement. I've gone through it, had a chance to look at it, satisfied that the contingencies are consistent with what I would expect in this kind of an agreement.
Okay. Council, try again. Mr. Lamberson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not the one that had these boxes put up here, but since they're up here and we spent the public's money, we probably ought to use them. I guess my questions, maybe for Mr. Woodfield or Ms. Hadley, as well as Gary, you could chime in. In the past, we have used literally millions of dollars out of our capital improvement fund, if I'm not mistaken. And it seems to me like those millions of dollars, if memory serves me right, were used for expenditures that didn't bring back a return to the community. They brought in service. They brought in amenities. They brought in things that the community used. They also brought in residual costs for maintenance and operations. I mean, just thinking, I might think of the parking garage. I might think of maybe the community center. I might think of, a number of different elements out there that we have used this particular fund to finance things for the city or spent money, one-time expenditures for the city. Looking at this from a business perspective, and I've asked this question before, but specifically regarding this project, can we use these funds for this kind of capital improvement under the description of economic development? And I've been told, yes, we can. Here we have an opportunity to do something that we have many times heard government should function more on the level of a business rather than just spend money. Where does the money come from to provide the basic services this community not only demands, but it has a right to expect? And those basic services are core services that include your police, your fire, your roads, your water, your garbage, your sewer, etc. Where does that money come from? And what does some of the other capital expenditures do to contribute to that cost as compared to what this has potential of doing? I mean, do those other capital expenditures bring revenue into this community? Thank you, Mark.
Okay, Councilman, we'll start on those and let me know if I missed any of your questions. You're right, Councilman, the Capital Improvement Fund has been used for several large capital projects and several small capital projects over the years, and it will continue to be used for those into the future. Some of those are the parking garage, community center, part of the library expansion, part of the Elks renovation, public safety projects, refurbishment of fire stations, various things like that. And as you mentioned, all those items are more of a service level as opposed to anything that returns money. In fact, a lot of them actually end up costing the city more money because they don't have a revenue component to them, but they're needed for service level to the citizens. The funding for the basic service levels, as we discussed some last week, in the general fund, which is our public safety, our police, our fire, our dispatch center, and our Parks and Rec department, as well as the library. All that funding comes from basically sales tax. 42% is our local tax. The remainder of the funding, majority of it comes from state shared revenues, which are constantly under attack. So a lot of it comes from the sales tax, and especially in our streets and open space fund, majority of that comes from sales tax as well. Did I get them all?
Yeah, you did. And, I'm going to talk, I guess, with the city manager for a moment here because, you're the one that is sitting in that seat right now. It seems to me that we've been told by both the federal government and by the state government there is no money. They have no money to help municipalities, and what monies they do have, they tell us how they want us to spend that money. this almost appears to me as though it's an issue where the community, through its elected leadership, has an opportunity to look at a way to generate the revenue that we need, or some of the revenue that we need to provide those basic services. Can you comment on that?
I can. As Mark Woodfill said, you know, the basic services, when you refer to police, fire, library, you know, those are almost 100%, you know, funded between the state tax and the local sales tax. When you talk basic services as in terms of water, wastewater, sanitation, et cetera, those are obviously user fees, so two different ones. The enterprise funds, the water, wastewater, et cetera, they have a fairly constant supply of income because it's a user fee. You turn on the water, you pay a fee, so we can count on those funds. Sales tax, however, not only can we not count on that type of funding, but once again this year we're facing, you know, $500,000 less from the state government that they're going to be sharing with us, as well as a couple of unfunded federal mandates. So no, we're not getting any money from the state or the federal government. In fact, they're taking money from us this year, and there's several bills in the legislature right now that would take even more from us in the coming years. So we really must rely on what we can produce locally, because we're not receiving help from the state or the federal government.
Thank you, and I appreciate the attorney for the other folks saying he recognizes this isn't a partnership. This is a business deal. This is a business relationship. We're not partners. You know, we're looking at an opportunity to help the community here in the long term, not necessarily Trader Joe's, or not necessarily the development company. I mean, you guys may be nice guys and everything, but you know, my job up here is to sit and look at what's good for the citizens of Prescott. So that's my comment.
Mr. Ware? And Gary, this is for you. Knowing you're an attorney and you're long-winded, I just really need a short answer.
Okay.
Based upon the development that you so eloquently went through, are you comfortable as a city attorney of the city of Prescott telling us that our tax money is protected the best that it possibly could be?
Yes, I think this is a fair agreement. I think we've done what we can to protect it. And ultimately, Steve, your question is, what protects the city's investment? We own the real property. We're buying the real property at fair market value, at an appraised value. And at the end of the day, if everything were to go south, we still own the property, and we own the property and whatever improvements are completed on the property if the lease agreements all fall through. So that's the security that you have.
Thank you. Ms. Lopez.
Mr. Birnbaum and Mr. Herron, thank you so much for investing in our community. I think it's wonderful. I know Trader Joe's is only opening this one store, and thank you for bringing that forward to us, because if we didn't have you as the developer, as the attorney putting this all together, we wouldn't be here today. And thank you also to Jane, because even before she's retired, she's been working on this for years and years and years. I really appreciate it. Mr. Birnbaum, thank you for explaining the details of this. I think there was a misconception. I had many people come to me or call me or email me, and they said, you know, I want Trader Joe's here, but I'm not sure about the financial, and why would you do this? And once it's explained in detail, people went, that makes sense. And I've always wanted to see government operate as business, which is one of my theories as well, to as much as possible. So I am really thrilled about this. I'm glad to see that we're doing a SPAC arrangement. I see a lot of real estate faces I know in the audience, and I know you guys understand that as well, that this is a good, sound investment for the community. Instead of giving away tax dollars, we're bringing more money in. All the dollars, I would love to know what Trader Joe's, if they do zip code research, because I'm really curious how much business is going to be pulled out of their other stores that we're going to now get, plus the additional shoppers that we're going to get from all of northern Arizona. So I'm very excited about this project, and again, thank you for explaining it so well to the public. I hope most of the questions are answered.
Anyone else, council? Okay, let's move forward. Mr. Lee, you asked for an opportunity to address the council, and now you have it.
Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jim Lee, and I live at 700 Cloud Crossing Circle in Prescott. This has been a very long journey. At the time we put together the Gateway Mall, the two most sought-after stores was Barnes & Noble bookstore and the Trader Joe's Market. I was selected to try to bring Trader Joe's into Prescott. The lady that was handling the site selection at that time was the sister of the CEO and the founder of Trader Joe's. We sold Nancy on Prescott, which was not difficult, but we were having a problem selling the corporate. We went ahead and inserted a small ad in the newspaper and the Courier to the effect that if the people of Prescott wanted a Trader Joe's, contact her brother, and gave the address. Shortly after that, Nancy went home for Thanksgiving holiday. About a week later, Nancy called and said that they were having dinner, Thanksgiving dinner, and her brother looked at her and said, "Nancy, where in the dickens is Prescott, Arizona? I have 7,000 letters and cards on my desk wanting a store." We were unable to sell that for two reasons. One is that to supply a single store in Prescott, they have to travel 200 miles with their trucks. The other one was if they wanted over 200,000 population in the area where they were going to locate, we had half of that. For the next years, the next 10 years actually, every year Trader Joe's at the International Shopping Center Convention was asked to bring a store to Prescott. They always refused because of the conditions I just explained to you. In 2010, they again were asked to come to Prescott. At that time I said, we would consider it because we have so many stores that we need to open in 2011, but because of the economic conditions, of the national economic conditions, several of them have dropped off. So we would consider coming to Prescott. With a lease in hand, we all started to try to put together a Trader Joe's in Prescott in this very severe economic time. We found no resource, no conventional financing. There was no money available, so we had to become creative, and that's how the public partnership evolved. It has brought us to this point. The journey now has come to an end. If you folks vote on a positive manner today, we will have a Trader Joe's in Prescott this year. If you don't vote for Trader Joe's at this meeting, we probably will not have it for many years and maybe never. I hope you will vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one other person that has asked to speak. Ray, come on up, and then we'll get into some kind of a rotation and let the public continue to have input.
My name is Ray Newton, a longtime resident in Prescott, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to be here in person today, so I had drafted a statement. I'd like to share that statement with you, and it's on behalf of myself, Ray Newton, and my wife, Patty. Please consider this statement as an endorsement of the proposal before the Prescott City Council to provide an incentive package to bring Trader Joe's to the Gateway Mall. A community like Prescott thrives on positive economic development, especially during a period of recession. We believe that you, as responsible representatives of the constituents who elected you, are making a sound economic decision in providing financial incentives to bring a new and proven business to Prescott. The issue that the business is Trader Joe's is not really a consideration, though I think we all like the idea of $2 Chuck. The bigger issue is that the city has an opportunity to bring a business that has minimal negative environmental impact and one that will create jobs and generate tax revenues. The developer will pay back to the city and over time pay back the incentive. Beyond that, the new business will generate sales tax revenues which return to the city, then will be used to support services. Moreover, as was noted in the February 11th editorial column of the Daily Courier, the concept is not a new one. The city has done this before, routinely and regularly. The city and the community have benefited because of the businesses that have been developed and the products they provide. In short, having the city bring a new business that creates ongoing jobs and increases tax revenues is just sound and prudent economic development policy, a policy we might note that has been adopted and practiced by progressive communities throughout Arizona. Ray and Patty Newton submit this to you.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, let's, there was a gentleman with his hand up that wanted to speak on the other side of the aisle, so come on down, please, sir. Ed, we'll get to you after a while. Want to give us your name and address?
Sure. My name is Robert Graybell. I live at 3045 Timberline Road in Prescott. And, you know, I wasn't here last week. I was out of town. And one of the places I used to live in Southern California, and that's where I was, commonly referred to as the Land of Oz. And where I lived there's 5 major shopping centers in this area. And you know what? They all referred to now as ghost town malls. Okay? City of Torrance gave the Del Amo Mall a lot of money. Mayor Dan Walker is no longer mayor of Torrance. And, you know, I'm looking at the city council here. Last time I beefed about you guys giving money to Horizon Air, what do we get out of that? And then when the arrogant guy showed up from Lowe's, when the wall fell down, what do we get from that? We invested money in them, got nothing for it. A lot of people lost money on the property value up there. I'm not opposed to the city development. Don't get me wrong, you have to progress. But what I'm opposed to is you giving us, or you giving them, our tax dollars. My position is, I've been a small business owner most all my life. And nobody ever subsidized me to do anything. And there's 2 major stores up here, Walmart and Fry's, that invested major dough in remodeling their stores. What did they get from the city council? Nothing. If I was them, I'd be filing a class action suit right now, today, to stop this. So, you know, it's got to be equal. If Trader Joe's, and I shop at Trader Joe's in Southern California, believe me, I did. But on the other hand, you got to look at it from the business point of view too. If they're making money, if they want to come here and make money, you know what? More power to them. Let them take all the money. But they should have to furnish their own money to start this deal. Not ours, not anybody else's. And we're talking about infrastructure and all that stuff. I know this is a whole separate fund. But you know what? A couple of months ago we had a snowstorm. You guys couldn't even plow my street. Okay? That was one day of work that I couldn't even get up. I couldn't get out of my street because they plowed the ones going up and down the road. There was a snow berm. Me and my neighbors had to go dig out the snow berm to get out and go to work. Think about that. So next time we're spending money here, think about you're spending about the citizen first, not for somebody else.
Okay. You want to hang there, and we'll try to get all those answers.
Sure.
Or those questions answered. I'll take the first one. We're buying a piece of dirt.
That's absolutely right.
At value that we are pretty well convinced will retain its value.
Okay.
And that's our contribution. And in return for that, we're getting 6% return on that investment. Now, on the Walmart you mentioned, Mark, we might mention that Walmart got a little money, but it's coming in over a period of time. So you might explain the Walmart.
I'm not sure I have all the facts off the top of my head, but there was a development agreement with Walmart dealing with the site work that needed to be done on the site, and that wasn't like this. There was no lease or any of that. That was a direct sales tax rebate where they got a percentage of the sales tax back.
So that pretty much took it. Now there was one other one that, and we'll try to get somebody on it. What was the last one?
Well, about plowing my street.
Oh, okay.
Okay? I mean, let me tell you, there's a lot of people on my street that are real unhappy.
Manager, I think you've got that cut out for you. The next snow, remember his street.
Timberline Road, but I'm still, it still comes back. I mean, it's a little bit of give and take, but at the same time, like I said, Trader Joe's fairly successful. Okay, there's about within the Torrance area, I think there's 3 or 4. There's one of them right close to where I live. Did I go there? Yeah, it's a good place. You don't buy everything there. Okay, I mean it's more of a specialty shop, and they do good business. But if they're that successful, they ought to be paying their own way.
Okay.
That's my point.
Your points are taken, and thanks for being a resident.
Mayor, may I make one quick comment?
Sure,
I want the public to understand something. I've heard it referred to, and it could just be misuse of words. The City of Prescott is entering into agreement, provided that we vote on it today, with a developer. And the developer's tenant has an agreement with them for Trader Joe's. We do not have an agreement with Trader Joe's. We are not giving them any perks or benefits. So I just want to make that clear, because I've heard this over and over and over, that we've got this deal with Trader Joe's. We have a deal with the developer. His tenant is Trader Joe's, just so everyone really understands.
Okay. Back to my question. The tenant doesn't make any difference. That's not my point. Why are we buying a piece of dirt for the developer so they can have a lease agreement with somebody else? The developer wants the land that bad. If they got such a good deal, pay it.
Let me try that one again. We're buying a piece of land to increase our revenue on some capital funds that have to be used for that purpose. The capital funds, the $2 million at this moment in time, is bringing in $26,000 a year to our treasury. It will immediately convert to $132,000 a year once this is done. So we're increasing our city revenue that will be used to replenish the capital fund, that portion, from $26,000 per year to $132,000 a year. We think that that's a good decision on the city side to increase revenue to where we don't have to go try to find other sources. So that's the reason. Okay, Albert, you the next.
Maybe we can buy a snowplow with the extra money coming in to plow your street.
Thank you, Mal.
You need somebody to run a snowplow too. Anyway, my name's Malcolm Barrett Jr. My address is 3211K Court, Prescott, Arizona. I come to you with a few hats on. First as a 30-year resident, second as a past planning and zoning commissioner and chairman, and past city councilman, which I shared with Marianne Suttles many, many years ago. And I think, Marianne, you can remember the trials and tribulations we went through back in the early 90s after the recent opening of Frontier Village, and Walmart and Home Depot locating and migrating the sales tax from the Prescott merchants and the Prescott citizens of Prescott's pocket out to Frontier Village, where we had no benefit. And we had to scramble, we had to struggle, and with the help of Mr. Lee and a few others, we're able to attract Costco to this same area, right down the road from it. And of course, to do that, we had to provide some incentives in the form of sales tax rebates. Now, we're not doing this on this particular project. All we're doing is making an investment and increasing our revenue to our fund by 6-fold. So it's a good decision even without the future sales tax revenue generation. But with Costco in particular, we invested about $3 million based on a 7-year payback of 1/2 of the sales tax. And that sales tax came back to us in 3 years, less than half the time budgeted. So it was a very, very good business decision in that particular case. And so in evaluating what kind of business decision we have here today, it is a guaranteed return on our capital improvement fund, number one. And number two, we have the surety that through a current appraisal that we're paying fair market value for the land. Well, I'm also speaking as a local real estate professional, in that looking at what has happened to these values now and what have been, this particular seller of the property paid $11 a square foot for this in 2004. We are now paying $6.50 a square foot for this in 2011. That's a 41% discount. Now that was 2004, before the real estate run-up. For an example, look at where the Fry's is located on Willow Creek Road. That property was $16 a square foot. There are some properties in Prescott Valley up in the commercial center that do not even have highway frontage that sold for as high as $18 a square foot. So I'm not representing to you as an appraiser, but I can represent as going over the appraisal that this is pretty low in the marketplace. I think we have absolute certainty that our investment is protected, and the minute they put that $4 million of buildings up there, we're even triply protected. We've got to be compensated no matter what happens with that property. So in closing, I would just urge you to support this, regardless of who the tenant is. It's a good deal, it's safe, it's fair market value, it's secure, and it provides for our economic security. Thank you.
Thank you, Mal. Jeez, that's unusual. Someone else that has a problem with this project. Yes, Ed, come on up.
Ed Burdick, 123 South Mount Vernon, Prescott, Arizona. First off, I'm in favor of the project. Second, I agree with Tammy Lynn's, we shouldn't be in the banking business. I've given it a lot of thought, and here's something that I think may work. If we set up a separate bond issue, there's 100,000 people in the greater Prescott area. If 10% or 10,000 people each bought a share in a bond of $220, that'll equate to $2,200,000. Now, anybody that had $220, and some have more than that, if you got a 6% return on your money, it's better than any banking institution in not only Prescott, Arizona, or the country. So why not go ahead with the project as per se, and go ahead and put it back in the hands of the people. In addition to it, the city would not have to have property which would be non-taxable, where if a private organization had it, it would be on its tax rolls. So I think it's like a case of getting your cake and eat it too. I think it's a no-brainer. I haven't heard anybody discuss it in the past, and yet we could get out of the banking business, and the people that thought that it was a good idea would kick in $220 for a share of it, and they would be an individual owner. Individuals in interests, I think, is a lot better than maybe having us in the real estate business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, yes, sir, come on up.
My name is Arlen Inman, 316 Southwind Circle at the ranch. I want to thank you all for holding this meeting and getting the public input, particularly also thanking the Courier for their editorial, which I think clearly lays out the economic benefits. I do also want, though, to stress that this community should also be looking for jobs. And certainly we don't know how many, but there's the possibility of some good-paying jobs. On the internet, you can find an interesting article from Forbes magazine. Trader Joe's is known for the team approach, and they have a really loyal employee group as well as incredible public support from those of us who love to trade at Trader Joe's. The Forbes article indicates that, for example, assistant managers and managers can expect to make $100,000 or more. The typical full-time employee typically makes from $40,000 to $60,000 a year, which, and by Prescott standards, are very good wages. Additionally, the company has traditionally had very good employee benefits. If you're a full-time employee at Trader Joe's, they give you 15.4% of your gross salary as a yearly contribution to the 401 tax-deferred retirement plan. I would say, again, there are probably very few organizations in the county that make that kind of commitment to their employee. I also have a question regarding the financing that was presented. It was not clear to me whether or not, as a commercial development, this would all be subject to local property tax that county, the city, and the schools would benefit from. I realize that when the city buys the property, obviously it will not be on the tax roll until the developer buys it. But again, once the developer does buy it, doesn't it go on the tax roll? And in addition, in the meantime, as Trader Joe spends $4 million for the facilities, isn't that taxable in terms of local property tax?
I can answer that. Once the city buys the dirt, the land, it will go off of the tax roll. However, all of the improvements will be taxed as personal property, and which is a higher rate than if it was all land and buildings. So
I didn't see that included in the treasurer's report.
Probably was not. But you're right on target.
And also the estimate in terms of once the store goes into operation, hopefully later this year, what is the estimated property tax for all of the improvements?
Yeah.
The schools and so forth will also benefit them.
Certainly, we don't have that number, and I don't know whether, Brett, whether you're at that point or not. But you're right on target, and thanks for your comments. Mr. Maurer, the chamber, I see him back, and looks like we're going to be honored and get a little talk from the new president of the chamber. So, Dave, won't you bring her on up, and we'll get a double hit here with.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. Dave Maurer, CEO of the Prescott Chamber of Commerce. With me today, hiding behind me, is the chair of our board, Lenore Nelson, president of Bennett Oil Company. Really, everything that we were going to say today has been said by others very, very well. We took this first to our Economic Development Committee and then on to our board. The agreement that has been outlined and discussed in many ways is, in fact, a business deal, as Mr. Lamerson has pointed out repeatedly. So we simply echo what many others have said. This appears to us to be a very good deal. We applaud staff of the city and all of you who have taken part in this. I think you've worked out a good deal, eventually beneficial to the city. I would go back to just one comment that my friend Ray Newton made in his letter. I think it's something to the effect that the city regularly and routinely does these types of incentives. I would disagree with that. I don't think that the city does that. I think you've picked very specific projects over a period of time. So I wouldn't term it regular and routinely. I would call it more strategic. Incentivizing businesses like this, projects like this. So that really is all that we had to say today, but thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're going to introduce the lady behind you?
I did.
I'll say a few words if I can. Thank you. Lenore Nelson, member of the Chamber, president of the board, president of Bennett Oil Company, third generation Prescottonian, raising fourth generation Prescottonians. I've seen and watched my dad spend time behind this desk, and also my brother. I think this is just a vote in Prescott, a vote on behalf of Prescott. And what we need, it's a vote for ourselves. It's a vote to help ourselves become more self-sufficient, and it's what we need to do right now. It's with the right partner. It's the right thing to do, and I would just urge you to vote in support of it. Thank you.
Thanks, and congratulations on your new job.
Thank you.
Okay. What's it worth? What are you paying today? Sandy, come on up.
Mayor, Council, good afternoon. Sandy Griffiths, Executive Director of the Contractors Association. We all know in a perfect world, the city of Prescott would not be involved in a private partnership. We also know that this is not a perfect world out there. We have no perfect economy, and I applaud you for taking the direction and being so bold and brave that you are to take this step forward for this community. I urge you to be flexible and let's do a unanimous vote for this project. I represent over 300 members. Those members have employees. Those employees have families, and those families have families. That equates to over 6,000 associates to the Contractors Association that also support this project. We have not had anything as exciting happen in our town for over 5 years. Public-private is the way to go. I think it's going to put Prescott on the map. It will certainly put Trader Joe's on the map, and we could possibly be the start of something big and bold for other communities that are experiencing what's happening to us right here, right now, today. And it's not only about sales tax, it's about jobs. It's about Brad Christensen being able to use, I have a Trader Joe's within walking distance. How's that? I mean, they're going to stay at the Residence Inn, by golly, and walk to Trader Joe's. This is too exciting to let pass up for our city. And again, I urge you to be flexible, and let's have a unanimous vote and show Trader Joe's and the developer that they are wanted and needed and loved for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Marianne?
I don't want to stop anybody from coming up.
Anyone else? Okay. Earl, come on up. Then you're next.
My name is Earl Wisdom. I've lived here for 17 years. But the way I look at this, take the land agreement away, take everything else, I think Prescott can take a lot of pride, because I know Trader Joe's has got to be excited about coming to Prescott, and I think it's a real tribute, and the city should take a lot of pride in that they have selected and put enough confidence in the marketing possibilities to put up a store in northern Arizona. There's Flagstaff, there's other areas, but I think the confidence that they have in their ability to have a good enterprise here in Prescott is really something we should take a lot of pride in. They're good operators. They're one of the best retailers in the country. Their benefits package is good, and I think they'll do nothing but just be a fantastic asset to our community. And I commend you for doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Earl. Okay, one more. Come on down.
Should I bring my bag?
Oh, absolutely. Did you bring one for everyone?
No. Just for you, Mayor. I'm Kathy Collins. I live at 1321 Sabatina in Prescott. And before I came here, I worked in economic development, and I tried to get a Trader Joe's for the community in a suburb of Chicago, and I failed. Couldn't do it. And I think that you have to understand, you have every economic developer's dream here, because you've got Trader Joe's interested in your community. I had all these comments of what to say, why I think this is a good deal, but we've heard them all today. But I think what we have to also take a look at is, what happens if we say no? Where will Trader Joe's go? Will it be just down the street? And where are all those sales tax dollars going to go? I think Trader Joe's has got an unusual draw to it. We Trader Joe's are faithful. I just spent $300 in Henderson this weekend shopping at Trader Joe's, and when I was there, I did additional shopping, and I think you're going to find there's an awful lot of people in Prescott who go to California, who go to Vegas, who go to Phoenix, and they do their Trader Joe's shopping. And it's money that's not going to be taken away from other grocery stores or other businesses here. It's money that is going to the community beyond. And I really can say, I hope to God we get it, so that my sales tax dollars will be able to come back to Prescott. So I hope you will take the tough decision and, kind of step out of the box. This is different in economic development for you, but I think it's the right decision, and I think you need to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, yes, sir. And then we're going to ask the council for a decision here.
Oh, that's you. Mayor, Council, I'm Tom Slayback, 715 East Goodwin Street. Where the heck is the Tea Party when we need them? It's not the purpose of local government to subsidize private business. And in this case, I'm, of course, referring to the developer, so that you understand where I'm coming from here. To me, this is a shell game of moving money around. We never can find the money of which $2.2 million would make a big improvement to local infrastructure downtown, specifically sidewalks. We need sidewalks. We don't have them. The ones we have are in deplorable condition. Then we have the whole problem with roads. We should be using our capital improvement money to do just that for the citizens of Prescott. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Hanna, you had something?
I do. I kind of waited till the end here so I could hear what everybody was saying. I find it very interesting that a small number of people can dictate to the large number of people what they should do. If you look at our government as a whole, right now we're in that position. I know the old adage of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I find it interesting that every time something comes up, the same people want to come back and right. You need to use a little common sense and take into consideration what we're dealing with. We're dealing with economic times that we have never treaded on before. As sitting here on this council, I've heard from this council, from different members of this council, we need to think outside the box. That's exactly right. In these economic times, we need to think outside the box. We need to realize that our sales tax revenue is dwindling. It's going down. When Prescott Valley opens up its Walmart, we're going to lose probably 40%, I would guess, sales tax revenue from the Walmart that's up on the hill, because the people in Prescott Valley will go to the one there, and you can't blame them. We need to realize that we need to replace this sales tax revenue if we are to maintain the basic services that we are, as a city, trying to provide to our citizens here in Prescott. If we don't maintain that sales tax revenue, we're going to lose firemen, we're going to lose policemen, we're going to lose people that work on the streets departments and things, that you're going to be the first ones to come back and gripe to us again because you don't have, but you're not willing to think outside the box and sacrifice and bring in sales tax revenue. And it's very disheartening to sit on this council and hear the same people over and over come back and whine about everything there is. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way that it is. This is a project that will generate sales tax revenue for the city of Prescott. It will help come back here and bring the basic services to our area. I support this 100%, and I hope we all do, but we are entitled to our differences of opinion.
You know, Mr. Hanna, we don't come here and whine, okay? You insulted me, you insulted other people, and we're not a small majority here, okay? The last time, like I said, when you guys voted money for something, believe me, half of the council people here that voted for it are not here this time, okay? Why is that?
That is your right, sir.
That's right, but I don't need to be insulted by you, sir.
If you were insulted by me, then I apologize that you took it that way.
Yeah, we're a little off target, but we're going to continue on. Noah.
Hi. Long time no see, folks. Noah Breen, 3196 Willow Creek Boulevard. Councilman Hanna, number one, I came here today in support of the project. Unlike other matters that I'm not going to discuss here, sir, there's a lot of things that have decisions that have been made of late. Yeah, a lot of people with goodwill who have supported many of you on the podium have had reason to disagree with.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're kind of getting away from that subject.
Mayor Kirkendall, the bottom line, if it is, in any kind of city, in any kind of setting, in any kind of democracy, occasionally, no matter how much I may personally like and respect you, I may disagree with you on an issue or so. And you. There's every time somebody disagrees, they're whining. There's things called principles that matter to folks. I may disagree with some of them, but just look at it this way. I've seen it here. I've been victimized by it here. But you know, not everybody has to agree with every choice that you all make 100% of the time. A healthier situation is where somebody disagrees with you 10% of the time. Just my point. A lot that would help this community is if you had a situation where 100% agreement isn't like really viewed as the norm. I should have the right, as a citizen and a person who cares, who still is here, maybe here a little longer than some people would like, to go over and disagree with people I may personally like and respect every once in a while, without being demonized, without being talked to like an idiot. That's what makes democracy work. I have as much problem with the lunatics on the Democratic side of the fence and certain other activities than I do with the folks on the right. But if you didn't learn anything from what happened a few days ago in Tucson, maybe we ought to go over and look at a place where you can disagree with the other guy once in a while and still be friends.
No, thank you for your comments. And we tried real hard to give both sides of the story here. So, and I don't think anyone can deny that. So, okay, Council Manager, you had some closing things, and then we'll go to a vote.
Okay. Well, Mayor and Council, I just wanted to, first of all, make sure that the questions that we started off today's meeting with have been answered. I think Mark Woodfill addressed the question of whether or not this is a prudent financial investment for the city. The second question that was asked before the meeting today was whether this type of transaction is appropriate for the city to make. It's legal. It's not unprecedented nor unusual. It's essentially a question of public policy. As pointed out in last week's presentation and repeatedly in the packet today, Arizona cities and towns are facing increased costs, decreased revenues, and no real way to get out of it. Like it or not, sales tax is crucial for Arizona municipalities, and if we can't stabilize our own tax revenue, more cuts are going to have to come, like Councilman Hanna said. You know, the city, just to remind everybody, the city is proposing to make an investment in this project as a catalyst to buy property. We're not lending money. We're not granting money. This is for the specific purpose of enhancing sales tax generation in order to provide the core public services. You know, like it or not, the city has to have money somehow, some way to provide for those core basic services. And this council's decision today is whether they believe this is the right decision and the right financial investment for them to make. I'd also just make a comment to the general public that we did receive about 285 emails over the last, week or so. Very much appreciate those who send us emails because they actually attach their names to the bottom of the email so we know who's sending them to us. Out of those 285 emails we received, 261 were in support of the project, 19 were opposed, and 5 liked the project but just thought maybe we should find a different location. So just to summarize what we have received over the last couple of weeks.
So we thank the public for that. Okay, Liz, let's go ahead and adopt some, or not adopt.
Mayor, do you want us to read each one and then do the motion?
I think we have to do each one as we go, don't we, Lynn? Yeah. So the floor is open for a motion on item A. And Liz, would you like to read that one?
You have to read it? Or can we just go to the resolution number here?
Which, do you want the resolutions read in their entirety? How do you want it done?
No, I think we can go ahead and introduce it. Just to kind of shorten it up, adoption, item 1A is a resolution that deals with the adoption of the development agreement. And the resolution number is 4065-1135.
Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 4065-1135.
Second.
Okay, the motion made and seconded. Let's vote.
Motion passes 6-1 with Councilwoman Lynn casting the dissenting vote.
Okay, let's go to item B.
Gary, do you want to address each one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Item B is the adoption of the ordinance, which basically deals with the purchase of the property and also deals with the assumption agreement as part of the ordinance. It's item 1B, adoption of ordinance number 4779-1130.
Okay,
Mayor.
Mr. Lamerson.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4779-1130.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Let's vote.
Motion passes 6-1 with Councilwoman Lynn casting the dissenting vote.
Okay, Gary, let's continue with item C.
Item C is proposed adoption of ordinance number 4780-1131. That's the ordinance that deals with the adoption of the lease and the lease purchase agreement options that I discussed earlier.
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4780-1131. Second.
Motion made and seconded. Let's vote.
Motion passes 6-1 with Councilwoman Lynn casting the dissenting vote.
Okay, Gary, item D.
Okay, item D is the discussion that we had regarding the transfer of the appropriations. It's a resolution that provides for the transfer of the unencumbered appropriations from the water fund to the city manager department and the general fund. Proposal was adoption of resolution number 4066-1136.
Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 4066-1136.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Let's vote.
Motion passes 5-2 with Councilwoman Lynn and Suttles casting the dissenting votes.
Okay, let's go to item E.
Mayor and Council, item E is the approval of the site plan. We didn't discuss that in detail today, we did last week, but if you have any further questions, Tom Geis can answer that.
Okay, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve site plan SI11-0011 with the following conditions. A, development shall be in substantial conformance to the site plan dated 1/8/11 and cited as Exhibit A. And B, development shall be in substantial conformance to the landscape plan dated 1/14/11 and cited as Exhibit B.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Let's vote.
Motion passes 6-1 with Councilwoman Lynn casting the dissenting vote.
Okay, item F.
And item F, Mayor and Council, is for the comprehensive sign plan. Again, if you have any specific questions on that sign plan, Tom Geis can answer those for you.
Mayor, I move to approve the comprehensive sign plan CC11-001 dated 2/2/11.
Jim, check that. It's 11-002.
No, mine says...
Or at least that's all right.
Discrepancy there. Is it 1 or 2? Typo.
It's 1.
1.
Mayor and Council, and we would just suggest that you add with the 3 conditions as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission on that. The commission meeting was after the council packet went out, so the recommendation was made after that.
Yeah, so the number is 001?
Correct.
On item F, the comprehensive sign plan.
That's correct. 001.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Somebody ready for motion?
I made the motion.
Okay.
Second.
Your second?
Could Mr. Geis ask that we amend that to say I'm sorry, Tom, could you rephrase that again?
Yes, just to include the 3 conditions of approval as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I would agree to that.
And I'll second it.
Okay, is that adequate? Gary?
Yeah, the second accepts the amendment as well.
Okay. Motion made and seconded, let's vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, any other comments from the council? Folks, thanks for being here. It's, maybe you can buy wine on what, November 1st? Thank you.